Okay, so we got Natalie Phillips here. Dr. Natalie Phillips was with us back, I think, like 30 episodes ago. You came on with Angela Alexander, and we talked a lot about like Clubhouse and the social app that social audio app of interacting with patients and other like-minded individuals using that. And it's always a lot of fun to chat with you and just kind of get a sense of what's going on in your world. I know that a lot's changed in the last year since we've talked, and I'm really curious to hear about just kind of an update. But just broadly speaking, what's on your radar right now, Natalie? Like, what's top of mind for you in terms of your practice and the things that you're seeing that might make you excited about the future of your practice and in the profession, and broadly speaking.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave, for having me back on. And yeah, it's funny to think about Clubhouse. It's been about a year and a half since I've been there, and I'm still there actually. I'm
That's
still there
awesome.
hosting some morning rooms with an excellent group of mods. And I loved when we had our listen here, like it was with a bunch of audiologists, and it was in a club that was called Talk Nerdy to Me, and we would come on. But we've all had different things go different ways, and so we don't show up for that room anymore. But what I love still about Clubhouse is it taught me as an audiologist what was important to me. And so I want to start with that first, and then I'll kind of give you maybe an update on where we are in our practice. But the one thing that I am super thankful for in networking outside of audiology and still being on Clubhouse is that it taught me that connection is huge and super important to me. And when I mean that, before, when somebody would ask me who I was and what did I do, I'd say, oh yeah, I'm an audiologist. I test hearing and I fit hearing aids, and I work with people that have dizziness problems and balance issues and ringing in the ears, sound sensitivity. And then I would go into, yep, we do this and this and this. And it would just be a list of what I did, right? And tests. But because of hanging out in Clubhouse, where I don't necessarily want to have to go through all that, like lists of what I do, I've changed my introduction, and I really, yes, it started with audiology, but it really, again, goes back to who I am, which is all about connection. And so when I introduce myself, I say, I am a connector. I enjoy connecting people to each other. And my day job is an audiologist, where I connect people back to hearing and back to their loved ones and back to their life. And so that's how and I don't say anything else, because nobody cares about, like, these are the different types of patients we see and this is what I do, right? But it is what we do as audiologists, is that we connect people back to life and back to their loved ones.
I like
And so I
that.
have to thank Clubhouse. Have to thank, just being in different rooms and learning how to talk about who I am and simplifying it, but not really even simplifying it, but really focusing on really what we do as audiologists is to connect people back to each other, right? So I wanted to start off with that first, because I thought that was kind of cool, especially because I was here talking about Clubhouse, and that's
Totally.
really what helped me hone in on what's important to me. And then what's new on the horizon is our practice is up and running. So Dr. Galloway, Hannah Galloway, and I started our practice we opened the doors back in November of 2021. And so it has been actually it's been 9 months, I think, 9 months, and it has been wonderful. We love it every day. There's different stressors, as far as in the beginning, and just kind of getting things credentialed with insurance companies, trying to figure out how we were going to see patients, doing all that type of thing. But we're up and running, and we're getting referrals, and keeping pretty busy. And we were laughing because we finally got paid after 7 months from insurance companies, which is crazy. But loving every bit. I don't think we would ever have changed our minds at all. And people still ask me, are you still happy? I'm like, yes, very, very, very happy because of the way that things are. But yeah, so we've been enjoying our practice. Just to give people an update on what our practice is so we've started our own audiology practice, but working with ear, nose, and throat physicians, working with surgeons, and pretty much throughout my whole career. And then when Hannah started as well, just kind of being with ear, nose, and throat physicians, we didn't really want to give up the medical side of our practice. And going into private practice, you think, okay, you've got to do hearing aids, you've got to sell hearing aids. Hearing aids are where it's at. And I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, no, we still want to see people for dizziness and balance issues. We still want to see tinnitus and sound sensitivity, and doing babies and pediatrics and cochlear implants and APD and implantable devices. Like, we don't want to give up anything. And so we decided, yeah, that's going to be our practice. Even though it's private practice, it might go slower, it might not, right? I mean, you don't know if diagnostics is going to make your practice go slower. And so we said, no, we really want to keep our referral sources, especially working with one of the best, what I feel is the best concussion specialist and brain injury specialist here in town. And so he has been sending us so many patients, initially for balance and some dizziness, but it morphs into tinnitus, sound sensitivity, hearing aids, APD, everything. And so it's been really interesting to be able to stay afloat as a medical practice and just being and loving it. And now, having more and more referrals, know that we are still the one-stop shop if you decide to send your patients to us. So I'm loving that part of our medical practice as well.
Yeah, I think that it's really cool that I like everything that you said there. You really distilled everything nicely in terms of what it means to practice the full scope beyond just the hearing aid. I think the hearing aid is obviously really important, but I think these other things are equally as important. And the diagnostics and being a true, being practicing the full scope and capturing all of that, I think is essential to the future of the profession of audiology, really. I mean, when we look at what's on the horizon, knowing that there's all kinds of threats on the dominant revenue stream being hearing aids, whether it be just new avenues of access, the expansion of big box retail, you name it, whatever it might be. And I just think that the leg that audiology will always have to stand on is its degree and the education and the scope. And so I see this emergence, or maybe it's like a rekindling of some of these other elements like you rattled off that I think we're seeing become commercialized in different ways that are really exciting. And I think just finding new ways to implement different types of diagnostics for things that make your services more holistic. Concussions are a super interesting one that seems to kind of just be coming into focus now, where, that's another, real broadly applicable field that has a lot of ancillary things that I think the audiologist is really well suited for. And again, it kind of like, I think, reprioritizes the question of like, if you have dizziness issues or you have like a concussion or whatever, I think that there's a huge initiative that the audiologist can undertake that will be a decades long process of conditioning the public into realizing that the audiologist is the professional that you seek out for these kinds of different things, and sort of detaching the connotation that an audiologist is synonymous just with hearing aids, that it's much more holistic than that. And I think that you're embodying that with your new practice to the fullest. And it's really exciting to hear, as somebody that's like kind of been in the field for a little while, but now doing your own thing. And to hear you say like, this is the emphasis that we're placing, feels representative of where the industry, I think, is kind of moving, broadly speaking, specifically the audiology side of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, if you didn't have access to be able to do some of the diagnostic testing that we're trained to do, a brain concussion specialist can send you their patient and you could do a hearing test. But I tell you, like, some of the patients that I've seen, total normal hearing after a car accident or a concussion or a sports injury or whatever it is, and then you'd be done if you weren't able to do anything else, right? And so typically when we do schedule these patients, we interview them on the phone to make sure we know what their symptoms are, and typically set them up for the correct appointments. Most of them do start off with a hearing test and a VEMP and a VNG. And then sometimes we find out that, hey, your hearing test is normal, but you're still struggling. Okay, let's ask a couple more questions. Is it when you're struggling to hear a noise, okay, it is, then let's get an APD evaluation done, right? And we can figure out what's going on so that you can get started on some rehab. Or maybe it's like, oh, there's some sound sensitivity with now some light sensitivity and headaches, a little bit more. We'll dive you into more a different type of evaluation. But just like some of my tinnitus patients that, these brain injury patients and concussions, they don't always get answers. And so to be able to do the tests or the evaluations, sit down and talk to them, you have to be very patient because with a brain injury or a concussion, they don't remember a lot of stuff necessarily all the time. And so really breaking up appointments sometimes helps, being understanding, if they forgot to do instructions, you just reschedule them and schedule them up for another day. But when they leave and you're giving them answers, I think that's one of the best feelings, is that they've been searching for a long time, thinking that something's wrong with them, but not getting the answers and not knowing. Sometimes the brain injury and concussion specialist might not know. It could be physical therapy. It could be related to the ears. It could be related to the nerves or cardiac related, whatever it is. But the Dr. Mystery, who is the specialist that we work with, he strongly believes that a high percentage of his patients have to do something went wrong in the ears or within that hearing system when they had that head injury. And so he always starts with us first to see if we can help out and we can give them some answers. And most of the times we do. So it's kind of fun to be able to do that.
I think it's super interesting too, like what you said there about a lot of people, they just want to be diagnosed. They just want to have a sense of what's going on. And that, in my opinion, will dovetail into all the commercial offerings. So I think that diagnostics is so important because it's the impetus to where you can then steer them toward, okay, let's have a conversation around hearing aids, because chances are that's the path that we need to go down. And I've had this conversation a bunch where as soon as things start to become more medical, and I'm sure you have had a lot of experience with this when you were working at an ENT, there's a big difference between somebody coming through your doors because they feel like they are, they have, it's like the proverbial, like my wife is telling me that I need to get my hearing tested versus my physician referred me on. And I think that there's a lot of power to that when people feel like this is more of a diagnosis, this is more of a medical opinion, that you need to go and seek these things out. And my broader point is, the more that you can diagnose and practice the full scope, the more opportunities you're going to have to ultimately treat these people in a variety of different ways, which will generate revenue in different ways too. So I just feel as if diagnostics and having a really robust set of diagnostics is like really a big priority for the profession of audiology right now.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, it yes, it's costly to have the equipment, right? Yes, it's, maybe for people who haven't done it for a while, it can be scary to be able to kind of step into that area again. But we've all learned it. And so it's a matter of just getting there, doing it, doing that repetition that will start to, get it's like riding a bike, you guys. And so if you're ever thinking of stepping into that world a little bit deeper, we all have it as audiologists. And so I just think it's super helpful to be able to do that. Now, the other flip side is, I get it. If you're not super passionate about it, don't do it. I mean, refer to a colleague that does have the passion to do it, and totally understand that. And just pretty much know what you're comfortable in doing. Or if you're the type of person that would love to be able to start that and have that entrepreneurial spirit of like, hey, I want to try something new again and get this going in my practice, do it. I recommend that you do. So it goes either way. It just depends on who you are, what you feel comfortable doing, and if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and get that part of your practice again.
For sure. I guess, kind of just sticking on the topic of you starting your own thing, which is super admirable. And I'm, tip of the hat to you. That's awesome that you did that. And I'm curious, like, where is your head at now in terms of like, okay, the first, like you said, like 8 months, you had to get this thing off the ground, but now it feels like it's kind of starting, you got lift off. what's exciting you about like what will the second year look like now that you sort of have that under you? What are you really looking forward to? And because I think that I would love for someone to take inspiration for this because it's hard enough to take the plunge and do this thing. And I think that there are folks like you that can serve as a great resource of I've done it. And I'm just curious of like, you've kind of done the big heavy lifting part of getting this thing off the ground. So now it seems as if maybe the fun part comes and what's exciting you about that?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there's a couple of things. There's a simple thing, first of all, that I was thinking of is hiring employees.
Right?
So yeah, Dr. Galloway and I did this, on our own. We kind of sat around and we're answering phones, and it's kind of funny and it's fun, and to be on the phone with people, and they're like, "Hey, am I speaking to Dr. Phillips?" I'm like, "Yes, that's me." you know, and then we have business advisors who are like, "You need to hire some employees." So in the last couple of months, we did hire a front desk person for a couple days a week, and then in the summer, my son started working here as well to get some good people skills and communication skills. And so he's running the front desk and talking to patients, making appointments, following up with that. So I'm looking forward to hiring an employee more full time. And then also students. Like we've always done students before. And with the transition into our own practice, like the one that we had to go back and work on her project, right? Because we just couldn't offer her the patient contact time, especially in the first few months. Yes, it was really cool to see the business side of it, but that's not what she was there for. She was there to get that patient contact. And so we had to come to the decision of allowing her to go back to work on her project. And then we haven't had a student. And so, we're really looking forward to having a full-time, like fourth year student. And that's going to start in, I think, May of 2022. Wait, this is 22, 23. Yes, May of 2023. And like Hannah's in charge of all of that. And so she put in, where she placed the ad, I guess, and where, students would be looking. And she said, we're getting a lot of interest for our fourth year placement, to have them come here for a whole year. And I'm super excited for that because we initially built this practice, and this is our temporary holding spot, but we initially did it so that we could actually see patients in 3 rooms. And so, right now we're kind of the two of us are between 3 rooms right now, which is totally fine, but we really wanted to see if we could ramp up again. And that's all part of, a business and really growing it, right? And so I'm really excited to have a student come on board. We will have to pause our year for a short period of time because Dr. Galloway is going to be on maternity as well. So we'll be down to 1 provider, but I think we'll do okay for a while, and then we'll kind of ramp up starting in January again when she comes back on board after maternity. And then we've got a good solid months before we take on our fourth year. So simply speaking, employees and students is what I'm looking forward to in the next year. And then doing some fun marketing things too, I think would be something that, sometimes when you're in a practice that you don't own, it kind of ties your hands from doing the things that you might want to do or doing some new things. If we ever went in under a hospital sort of corporate type of uh, system, again, our hands would be tied. And so, with our show, with some different things that we want to do marketing wise, it'd be good to have some time to look at it and see if we want to start up something interesting. Us, like we like to be cutting edge and try to get some good information out to consumers and to professionals. So I'm looking forward to doing some fun things.
I love all that. I think it's just really neat to hear. It's like how I built my business, and I'm talking to you, and it's like year 1, and so I can't wait to hear what it's like in a couple of years from now as you just keep building this thing. It's just really, really neat to hear, and I love what you said too at the beginning about how you're a connector. You're totally a connector. That is a great way to sum up your personality in a nutshell. And I've just, you've connected me to a number of people, and I just think that you're really an awesome person to know, and I appreciate all the conversations that we've had both on the podcast, offline, in person, whenever it might be. So I just want to say that I appreciate you coming on, and best of luck to you with your practice. And we'll definitely have to connect and get an update from you down the line.
Will do. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.